little babies in the house. I'm starting a business. My wife's not working other than helping me with the business. She's helping the babies. I've got this new company, and I'm still doing IT consulting on the side because it's got to pay for all this stuff.
Hey, got something really cool I wanted to run by and let you know what's going on. So I'm starting a group that will start taking a deep dive into each one of these episodes. So we'll collectively come together and talk about the shows, talk about the guests. I'll be bringing back some of the guests to do some Q&A sessions and really take a further dive into their story, their journey, the episode, talk about, maybe some of the things you wish I would have asked on the episodes, do some Q&A sessions and the like. As a friend put it to me, it's really like a book club, but for the podcast. So a couple times a week, we'll go in, we'll break down the favorite shows of the week, and have cool discussions around everything that we've heard, we've learned, and want to know about their journey. Some of these guests will come in and they'll teach part of what makes them awesome at what they do. And then, as always, I'll be providing regular value and content in this group. It's really cool because this only is going to cost $5 a month to join this group. And you'll be able to come in, interact with everybody else in there. So I'll put a link right in the show notes for this that you can jump in, come have a conversation with us, and we will really deep dive into each one of these episodes and help us all rise up together. Thanks for tuning in, guys. It's going to be a great show today. Having the show wasn't something I started out to do. But the day I found out somebody wanted to really sponsor the show was a really, really cool experience. So, guys, I want you to take some time to go check out Point Blank Safety Services and their new nonprofit, Blue Family Fund. These guys are doing some really, really cool things. And Stacy McGovern, who's the CEO over there, has been a dear friend, and she was a guest on the show. But these guys are literally taking, the off-duty officers and putting them out in security guard role. And here's what's cool about it is, as they're protecting our lives, they don't make a whole lot of money in that regard. No first responders are paid for the value they provide for our safety and our health and taking care of us. So these guys, Stacy and her team over at Point Blank Safety Services have really found a cool way to give back to these officers by helping them provide an additional income so they can continue to support and protect us. So do me a favor, guys. Seriously, go check out pointblanksafety.com and then go look at their nonprofit, which is Blue Family Fund. Now, this nonprofit was created because of the success of Point Blank Safety Services. They wanted to give back to the families of fallen officers and be able to give scholarships away to the families of current, police officers. So do me a favor. It would mean the world to me if you would go out and help support this show by supporting Point Blank Safety Services and their nonprofit Blue Family Fund. Just tell them Donnie has sent you. You heard it on Donnie Success Champions, and Stacy will take a tremendous and amazing care of you. Thanks, guys. All right, guys, so this is going to be a fun episode. I'm bringing back a Marine buddy of mine. Kevin and I, we found each other through networking and just have hung out and, stayed in touch all over our U.S. travels. So really good story about how he just kept falling into entrepreneurism and things just kept working. He built some really successful businesses, and he's doing it again, this time up in Seattle. So enjoy this story, guys. All right, guys, I've been looking forward to this episode. I got a Marine buddy of mine on here, and I love busting his chops. We've been friends. He was a client, in a roundabout way once upon a time. So I'm bringing in Kevin Campbell, and I'm sure we're going to have a good time. I'm sure I'm going to give him hell. So Kevin, my friend, welcome to the show, brother. Please tell us your story.
Tell you my story. Where to start?
Well, we don't want to tell your age, so we don't want to go all the way back to when you got out of the Marine Corps, because that was 100 years ago. So
Right?
Why don't we go from, really, let's start actually back to, let's talk about when you get out of the Marine Corps, walk us a little bit through your career, and then let's talk into.
Oh my God. You said we only have 45 minutes, right?
Yes.
So it's been a journey. God, when I came out of the Marines, I did all kinds of stuff. I did private security for a while. I was on security teams in casinos, and I ran a repossession company for a while. That was wild. Did all kinds of basically crazy crap that you would expect ex-Marines to do. At one point, I went, this isn't working out real well for me. I probably better figure out what I'm really going to do. At some point, I got into the tech world, got into IT engineering, and had no intention of it. It's funny. I tried several businesses when I was younger, like my repo company and various other things that, while they were okay, they just never really worked out the way I wanted them to. And then the first company I had that was successful, the irony is I wasn't trying to start that company when I started. I was trying to figure something out and ended up turning into a company. And what it was I was living in the Dallas-Fort Worth area there, living outside of Fort Worth. And I had gone to SMU for IT engineering and started working for some companies doing IT consulting. And at one point I decided to hang my own shingle. I'd gotten laid off from a position I was in, and all the job offers I was getting was in Dallas. And my wife said, do you want to live in Dallas? Because we lived on the west side of Fort Worth. And I said, not really. And she said, well, you got to figure something else out then, because you're not driving to Dallas every day. So we went, okay, I'll hang up my own shingle and just start an IT consulting company. And I was just going to work out of the house, which was on a family farm we had out at eastern Parker County. It was out between Weatherford and Fort Worth. And but the problem was this is 2002-ish, somewhere around 2002. And at the time, there was no such thing as high-speed internet out in those parts of the country. And this is true all across the country, outlying areas had no internet. You didn't have it on your cell phone. There was no smartphones, didn't exist yet. And there was no internet. So I was like, all right, well, I'm an IT engineer. Maybe I can figure this thing out. So I contacted some people I knew, and we ended up bringing in a microwave circuit from downtown Fort Worth all the way out to our farm. And I figured, okay, in order to pay for this thing, because it was a huge investment and quite expensive to have internet out there, there was a subdivision getting built next door. And this next to our farm, and one of the old neighbor farms had sold, and they turned it into the subdivision. I was like, okay, well, I'll pop up some wireless gear and start selling internet up here just to pay for my access, so I can have access here. So all I was trying to do was get internet at my office on the farm. That's all I was trying to do. And so I could open an IT consulting company. And then word got out that I was doing that. I put out some flyers on some of the houses in the next place. Pretty soon it spread like wildfire. And I literally had people coming up to my house, knocking on my door, asking me if I could provide internet for them. Right?
Okay. Here's what's funny about that. So my wife and I live in Azle now. So
right.
That's where our farm is. And I can't get internet out at my farm. All right. I've got a 3-story Victorian house, and it's not bragging, it's just 3 stories tall, right? For me to get internet, they told me I had to put a 40-foot tower with a satellite dish on top of that to get line of sight so I could get internet. So I'm like, I'm going to hit low-flying planes. I'm not doing that. You said screw the pooch in that whole plan, went and got your own internet coming in and didn't want to pay for it. So you went door to door with flyers and became an internet company.
So ironically, the companies that you're talking to about serving your place there in Azle, one of them was probably the company that I started.
Dude, can you make a phone call for me?
We can talk about that, Donnie. The area we're talking about is Azle. We're talking about the 730 corridor from Azle out there. And totally. And that's exactly it, is one of the companies that's in that area, probably one of the ones you were talking about, is one of the ones that I started.
Yeah, dude. Forgive this expression, but that is an entrepreneur's wet dream. You not even trying to start that type of business, but it falls in your lap. You got to love that.
It's so funny, and you're so right. And it was just an absolute blessing. And then I connected with the right people, and we were able to explode it. And the company we ended up, it's a long story, but we ended up building a cooperative of companies like that were working together. and did some really cool stuff. I got partnered up with the right people, and I started off by myself. Literally, it was so funny. We started literally, they say, you hear about companies starting in garages and stuff like that. Well, we actually started in the house, and it was the house out on the farm. My great-great-grandfather built that house. Then, as my wife, and this is, of course, right when we're having kids, right? No stress there at all.
Right.
Got little babies in the house. I'm starting a business. My wife's not working other than helping me with the business. She's helping the babies. I've got this new company, and I'm still doing IT consulting on the side because it's got to pay for all this stuff. Well, so I get evicted out of the house because we needed the bedroom for our second child. So that would have been 2005. I got evicted from the house because we needed the third bedroom for my son Quinn when he was born. And this is right as the company's really kind of taken off. We moved the office out into a barn on the property. And it was this barn, my great-great-grandfather had built it back in the 1800s, and inside this barn was a granary. So it was all this tongue and groove wood. I mean, it was beautiful, actually. The room itself was beautiful, and the stunning woodwork in there, because they had to, this is back in the day when they had to build these granaries so tight so rodents couldn't get into them. And it was so funny. So you would pull up to this old barn out there off of 1886 in Azle. And if you open the door to the barn, it looks just like any other barn until you walk into the granary. You walk into the granary, and there's racks of servers sitting there running. I mean, it was like something out of a movie. And one of my first employees, his name was Doug, he called it, because it was the barn and the office, he started calling it the Barfus.
The Barfus.
And it stuck. So after that, it was the Barfus. But that was the first company I had, because that was actually probably my third company, I think, at that point. The first couple just didn't stick. I'd done at least one or two others before then. I know one, maybe two before that hadn't really stuck. And that was the first, like you said, it's entrepreneur's wet dream. People banging down my door going, "Hey, can you get me internet?" It was like, "Dude, do you have the stuff?"
Right? I mean, that was going to be my next suggestion is, you're out here in Azle. I mean, in the country, you could have the beautiful farm ranch like we do, and then have the meth house right next door. So it's not too big of a fantasy to say wrong guy knocking on your door. I need internet. That's
right, exactly. Yeah. So that was quite a ride. And so I sold out my shares of that company in 2011. And headed in a different direction, and still blowing and going. And at this point, I've been an entrepreneur most of my adult life, so I'm pretty sure I'm at the point of being completely unemployable.
Yeah. That's kind of the MO for entrepreneurs, as I'm finding out for myself, is once you jump out, you're ruined for anything else.
Nobody in their right mind would possibly ever hire me.
No. What's the old phrase? I'll never die because God doesn't want me and hell's afraid I'll take over. That's why you don't want an entrepreneur.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. Totally. We're just, and especially when there's some that are, can be contained. And, for most of us, we've been on our own too long and too used to being in charge and doing things our own way, and that make us. And that was one of the dangers of entrepreneurship, right?
Right.
It certainly is. I started my repo company. I started that, and I was 23 years old. Since I was 23, I've spent 3 years working for somebody else, and it was hell.
So what happened after you sold this whole just happenstance, internet company? Where'd you go from there?
I got into financial services, and throughout that process, I got into technology. This was right around 2000, right when I decided to get into technology. And I did it because I didn't know what else I wanted. I did it because I didn't know what else to do. And I did it just like a lot of people. I did it for the money. Technology's where you can make good money. And I never had a passion for technology. I never loved it. Ironically, as I sit here saying this, I am in one of my other roles. Right now I'm wearing multiple hats like most entrepreneurs do. In one of the companies that I'm a partner, I am the chief technology officer. And which is just irony, because as I'm sitting here going, I never had a passion for technology, but I had skills for it. It was just never anything and there was parts of it that I really do like, and I like the creative side of it, but the day-to-day management, maintenance, and all that of technology is not what I enjoy. But during this process, when I was running this tech company, I was attending a church out there in the Azle area, and they asked me, my family church that my my forefathers were some of the founders of that church, one of the founding families of that church back in the 1800s there. And they asked me at that point, I got asked to be the finance chair for the church. And by this point, this is like 2008. So I remember what was going on in 2008. Mm-hmm. Imagine taking over being the chair of finance for a church in 2008, because what happened to most churches is all of a sudden all the donations stopped because so many people were in financial trouble. So that was a whole adventure there, dealing with those financial issues for that. And at the same time, I got asked to teach, being the finance chair, they asked me to teach Dave Ramsey class. Right, Dave Ramsey, Financial Peace University on personal finance. And so we went through all that, and I actually learned that I had kind of a knack for financials and helping people with financials. A lot of the people in the class were saying, hey, I understand the concepts, but we're having a hard time figuring out how to implement and how to, make traction. I'd say, okay, come over to my house, let's lay it out, and we'll start figuring it out. So I started figuring out that I had a knack for helping people with financial problems. And so about then, I started kind of thinking that I was getting a little burnout on the technology side. I had a few things happen here and there that made me decide it was time to start looking for other opportunities. And once again, just I didn't have a passion for the tech. And so in about 2009, I decided to start heading in a different direction. So I ran across this opportunity to get into helping people pay for college, which ties in with the financial side. So I started that company in late 2009. By 2011, I was doing that full time, and I ran both companies for a couple of years. And by 2011, I sold out my pieces of the other company to some of the guys that I had started this cooperative with. And they're still running it today in your area. That company still exists and is still doing great, and it's still operational, which is pretty cool.
Well, good, because I'm going to get the buddy hook up here for too long. Don't worry.
I know this dude.
Right. So, well, is it still safe to use your name? I know. I mean, you leave.
Well, it's so funny. If you call the company, and I don't know if it's appropriate to mention the company's name on this or not, so I'm not going to right now. But if you call the company, you'll hear my voice still. On the IVRs, if you call the company, it was so funny because I have a couple of clients. One of my clients calls me up one day, and they're like, you wouldn't believe it, but there's this guy on the voice record, on the, like the phone tree thing for my internet company, and it sounds just like you. And I just started laughing, and I'm like, that is me. I recorded those in about 2010. So they still have some of the same recordings that have been running since 2010 are still running.
Vanity is another thing with entrepreneurs. So he probably wrote some exit clause saying they cannot remove his voice from the system.
So yeah, it is so funny. But I just started laughing when that happened. But and last time I called them a couple of days ago, because they're actually still providing my phone service here at my office, and my offices in Fort Worth and even my offices in Seattle are powered by the phone systems from that company. And I called in the other day, and my voice is still there. It's still me.
That's funny.
Yeah, but it's been a heck of a ride. And so I sold that out 2011, and that's gone through a couple of iterations. That was my college planning company was originally College Planning Authority. Then we got involved with the franchise for a while and for quite a few years. And I left that franchise last December 2017. We left that franchise. It just wasn't good people, but it just wasn't working out the way that we had wanted it to for us. And I decided it was time to go a different direction. And so we're still in the same industry, but we've gone both. We've been out there on our own. We've been in a franchise. Now we're back on our own again and rapidly expanding. And that's great. We've actually just come off of one of our best quarters ever. So that's a great place to be. But it's been a heck of a ride, man.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm gonna jump into a bunch of the key points here. First and foremost, what made you start a repo business when you're not a big dude? You got a Marine Corps in your background, but 23 years old. What goes through a guy's head and says, I'm going to start a repo business?
Well, I didn't actually. The way it first started working out was I mentioned that I was working on a security team in a casino. We would occasionally get little side gigs doing stuff. Somebody call up and go. So one of the guys owned a private investigation company, and so we'd get these occasional side gigs. And that's kind of how this started off. Was I was working with this guy on this kind of side gig. And then that kind of fell apart, but he wasn't quite doing what he needed to be doing. And one of the people he was working for came to me and said, "Hey, can you kind of step in and take over some of this? And I need you to handle." It was the same kind of thing. "I need you to handle a few deals for me, and pretty soon I have a business." And it was one of those things that, once again, we weren't trying to start a company. It wasn't like I was sitting there going, "God, what am I going to do? You know what I think I'll do? I'll start a repo company."
Right.
It kind of landed in my lap, and we ran with it for a few years. But it's just, man, that's a thankless job. That's a horrible job. And the employees, because we got, it wasn't just me in a pickup truck or something like that. I had shifts of repo guys out running. It started off with, me and a buddy of mine, and hell, we didn't even have a truck. We were out literally stealing cars,
Nice.
out hot wiring cars and stuff, and repossessing them. And we eventually got to the point where we bought trucks and that kind of stuff. And it was just, man, that was a horrible, that was my first experience with a partnership, and it was not pleasant.
So would you say if there's somebody else wanted to be an entrepreneur and jump in the game, to go start something and just get ready to pivot until you find the real business?
God, that's a great question.
Because, that's been a lot of your MO with most of the things that you fell into, you didn't set out. So, these things have kind of, literally fell in your lap.
That's a great question. I've really never really thought about it that way. That's a great observation. But you're right. Everything I've done, it's not like I was sitting around going, "Hey, I need to start a business." So it's not like I sat there and evaluated the business markets and went, the trends are going towards X, Y, and Z.
But come on, Kevin, you're supposed to have, a 35-page business plan and a financials together before you start a business. That's what all these coaches and gurus tell you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, totally. You're right. Every one of them has been opportunities that have kind of, it's almost been more of a metaphor. What's that word? I'm going to try. I can't say it.
Yeah, you're a Marine. Just step on it. Metamorphosis.
Yes, that's the one. Metamorphosis. And it's been a journey. Let's use journey. It's been a journey. And but I will say one thing that I think has been really critical is I've got a young man in my office. He's an intern. And we were talking the other day. Good young guy. He's in college, sophomore, and he's working for me. And I was talking about the importance of relationships. And I was talking about I can tie back so many things that happened to me along the way, good things, so many doors that opened for me. I can actually go back and go, well, I met this person, and it all ties back to a favor I did for one guy. I did one guy a favor, and I helped him out. He was not in a bad spot, but it was just one of those things. I went out of my way to help somebody, and he felt like he owed me one. And for the next couple of years, he opened several doors for me, and those doors opened more doors, and those doors opened more doors. And there's so many things. His name's Patrick, and Patrick is the guy who opened so many doors for me. And I don't know, you may even know him. He's a Fort Worth guy. Patrick Dewar. You know
Patrick, which one?
Patrick Dewar.
Oh, I know the name. I don't know if I know him. Yeah.
I'm sure. I know some of the people. I know there's.
Yeah.
I know that you and I have joint friends who know who Pat is.
Yeah.
And, Pat he's one of those guys. It was just one of a few things. I helped him out, and he felt like he owed me one, so he did me a solid, and then we became friends, and he opened doors for me for a while. And it wasn't like massive stuff. It was all those little things, and you sit there and you go, and you take all these series of events back. And realize it was one thing I did for one guy made everything, it's so the point of this is if you're becoming an entrepreneur, if you're, all these things, you never know who is going to be able to help you. You never know, and which also goes along with not being, don't be a bonehead to people, right? Because you never know who's going to be the guy who opens the door for you, or what relationship is going to end up, so important for you.
Yeah, no, and I love telling people that life is not about who you know, it's about who knows you.
Right.
And the best way to get known is do what you did, which is do for others, right? Go serve, go help other people out. And it's not for the purpose, and like you said, the guy felt like he owed you one. You didn't think he owed you one, right? But when you do something for people, they feel like they're almost obligated to do something in kindness in return if they're good people. Now, there's jackasses out there, don't get me wrong, but that's what makes the world really go around. It's not salespeople. It's not entrepreneurs. It's all about building the right relationships, making the right contacts, and at the end of the day, doing the right damn thing.
Right? Totally it. I was just, now I've gotten to the point in my financial services realm where I actually train a lot of other people. And I was just on a training call with somebody this morning, and I was explaining to them, the biggest thing is take care of the client. And I'm in the financial services world, and something that a lot of people, I think it's not like I mention this to a lot of people, but when people ask me, especially other agents that I'm training about, things like compensation and, okay, well, when you're structuring a deal, as a financial advisor, we're paid for the production that we do. I tell them, I'm like, what? I never, ever calculate my compensation on a deal. Never. I never calculate when I'm putting together a financial strategy for a client. Because I started off doing this in my early career. I would start calculating how much I was going to make on something. And then I started realizing that it was skewing. I was like, hey, wait a sec. This can skew how I take care of my clients.
Yeah.
So I quit doing that. Somebody was asking me the other day, the way it came up was another guy was asking me, was like, well, what's the compensation on a plan like this? I'm like, I have no idea. And he goes, what do you mean? He's like, you do this all the time. I'm like, yeah, I don't know. I never look. And I never look, and I never calculate it. I know that if I take care of my clients, and I know it sounds crazy, but and I'm sure a lot of people don't believe me when I say it, but my theory is if I take care of my clients, the money will come.
Yeah, absolutely. What's interesting about that, Bud, is when I sold commercial printing before you and I met, they had this thing called YY, and to this day, nobody knows where that term came from in this company I work for. But what YY was is, we sold large scale volume printing, brochures and the like. And YY is that when I would come in and say I need to do 100,000 brochures, the estimator would get me a price. Whatever I could sell that for over the price the estimator gave me, I got to split 50-50 on top of my commission. So we were being incentivized to go oversell these products and services. And I remember my first year or two, I did that. I mean, I made some really good money. And then somewhere along the way, my damn conscience kicked in and go, what the hell are you doing? Because there was a client popped up, and I had an opportunity where I was at a crossroads where I could save her a ton of money, or I could not tell her about the change in stock, the big price drop that happened, and I could turn that all into, and, my conscience got the better of me, and I'm like, dude, you can't do that to her. She's a friend, right? Which made me go, well, crap, you can't do that to anybody. Right. It's one of those things as a young guy, in my 20s, you're hungry, you're starving, you're trying to figure things out. And then as you get a little bit older and wiser, you grow up a little bit. So it's amazing that, when I was doing the sales training gig, thinking back in a lot of those conversations is the biggest thing that screwed a lot of those guys up is they were already cashing the check before the deal was done.
Yep. As they're sitting there talking to the prospect, they're spending that money in their head.
Absolutely. And, as soon as you do that, you're going to lose the deal because you take all logic out of the whole conversation.
Yeah, so true.
I know this about you, but everybody else doesn't. How'd the whole boating thing come along?
How did the whole boating thing? Yeah, I do have a bit of a boating problem.
Yeah, just tiny one.
Matter of fact, you're lucky. We had the scheduling problem with this. Ended up not getting on my calendar because I had it scheduled and luckily this fell apart. But I'm supposed to be doing a check ride right now on a sailboat. Yeah,
I'm way more fun than a sailboat. I'm just saying.
No, you're not.
So, but I know you're into it. Your daughter's into it too, right? Or she was.
No, she still is. She's actually still races. So my wife and I, we've been around boats for years. Back when we lived in North Texas, we had some boats out on Eagle Mountain. My parents had a boat out on Eagle Mountain, several boats on Eagle Mountain, Texoma, and all that. So my dad got into boats pretty heavily, bought his first big boat, big cruiser, when I was about 19. And so for the last, 20 some odd, 30 years almost, I've been around boats off and on. And I've spent, when we were there in Fort Worth, we spent a lot of time on Eagle Mountain Lake, Fort Worth Boat Club, and powerboating originally.
Party Cove.
No, I don't know anything about party code.
Me either.
Right, never heard of it. So we spent quite a bit of time out there, and we got into sailing because we were because we were members of the Fort Worth Boat Club. We got into sailing out there, and literally got invited. Somebody was short on crew, and they're like, "Hey, you're able-bodied. Do you want to come sailing?" And I'm like, I don't know anything about sailing. And they're like, "Can you follow directions?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Let's go." Right, we got a race to run. We've got a race to run, and we're short-handed. Get on the boat. And so we got into sailing, and just have a true passion for it, love it, and which is actually one of the things that finally ended up moving us to the Puget Sound area, which is where we live now. We live on an island near Seattle.
Now, that part I knew, because I remember when you left Texas, that was the only thing that you kept singing was, my daughter wants to race. We want to do your boats. There's not a whole lot of racing here in North Texas. We're going to play.
Yep. Oh, by the way, I'm having dinner with Jeff tonight.
Oh, are you really?
Yeah, Jeff Bowie?
Yeah. Tell him I said hello.
Yeah, I will. Another mutual friend of ours actually ended up moving up here.
Yep.
So we're having actually here in a couple hours. I'm headed to his house for a little barbecue tonight. But,
awesome. Well, tell him and his wife I said hello. They're awesome people.
So, yeah, they are. They're great.
Guys, and that's the power of networking and getting to know people. I mean, your network, as you continue on your journeys, it's going to expand. It's going to go. I mean, you're going to have friends all over. People are going to move. Not that I would use it, but I could call Kevin or Jeff up there in Seattle, say, "Hey, I'm coming in. Can y'all put me up for a night?" And, they'd probably put me out in the back of a garage or something, but,
Well, I have a daughter, so yeah.
And I have a wife, so we're good.
So yeah, it is. It's great, the power, and you're so right. And this is something I explained to my daughter, because about the time about the power of networking is through our love of water and sailing. Our daughter got into it as well, and the first time she actually raced and did a race, she was probably, I don't know, maybe 12, I guess, something like that. Her first race, which was down in Palacios, Texas on the Gulf. In her own little, 12 years old, in a boat by herself out there. And she was terrified, absolutely hyperventilating, terrified. And she went out there and she did it. And she came back and she was pumped. She loved it. She was hooked. And ever since then, she's been hooked. She's done really good. And she's a very competitive sailor. And one of the things that I taught her, though, is I said, this is such a benefit to you, because you will, through your love of sailing, assuming you continue doing that, it's like great racing when you're young and all that kind of thing, but sailing is something you do your whole life. And already at 15, my daughter has a network of friends across the country. She has friends. These are people that she has raced against and competed against. But they're all friends of hers. And by the time she's in her early 20s, she will have a network of people, an even larger network of people all across the country. And frankly, keep in mind, sailing is not a cheap sport. So most of these tend to be more affluent families and things like that. So, she will be well connected with a good network in her early 20s. And that's an amazing thing. And that's awesome. I didn't have that.
Right.
I knew guys like you.
There's some truth in that.
Right. I knew a bunch of jarheads.
Right. And I think people often forget that is, there's a lot of times being an entrepreneur, as I continue to learn, is you can get siloed really, really quick. And, you can think about, I'm here, I got to run my business, I got to do this. And sometimes you take your foot off the gas as far as, mixing and mingling with people, getting to know, making relationships, making friendships. And it's like anything, whether it's sales, business development, or just working on your business, the moment you take your foot off that gas pedal, everything starts running backwards.
Yep.
So it's about staying in the game, staying engaged, and growing and moving forward with it, as it continues to move on. Where do you think all this has taken you, brother? You've had a hell of a journey. You keep seeming to fall into piles of manure coming out smelling like roses. Where's all this taking you? Where are you going to go? You going to sail off into the sunset one of these days and not come back?
I think I'll probably end up sticking around doing what I'm doing, at least for the foreseeable future. I'll be doing what I'm doing. I've spent a lot of time working on virtualizing my business. So just like we're doing this recording, my office, if I gave you the tour of my office here, there's teleprompters, there's studio lights. I do almost all of my work via video conference. So I have clients all over the country. As a financial advisor, I'm licensed in, I think, 13 states right now or something like that. And I do 98% of my work remotely. So it's one of those things that as I go into my, what you call the twilight years of my career, of my work.
Wait, twilight years for you, that was like 10 years ago. You're like an ancient year.
I still got a long way to go. I'm only 48, right? So yeah. I know I look a lot older than that, but I'm only 48. So anyways, but so I've still got a solid 20 in me, really. Like many people, even though I've done well, 2008 was brutal. And there was a point back in that timeline where I thought I would retire at 55, and then 2008 happened, and now I won't be. So like a lot of people, I've got to keep keeping on for a long time. I've got my kids are, getting ready to go to college here. I've got my daughter hits college in 2 years. My son is 3 years behind her. So I'm getting ready to have that conga line of 6-digit expenses coming through. So I'll be going at it for quite a while. And besides that, I like what I do. And to me, I think this is something that you'll start seeing as well. It's a trend I'm seeing, especially working in financial services with people, is for some people, the goal is still retirement, right? Hey, 55 or 60 or 65 or whatever it is, I want to punch out. And I would go insane. And right. my wife would kill me. So, too much idle time is not necessarily a good thing. So I don't really have any intention of punching out anytime soon. I'll keep doing what I'm doing. But at some point, I think the goal for a lot of people is by the later years of their career to start having freedom of time and place. Mm. And to me, that's more important. And that's one of the things why I've pushed so hard on virtualizing my company, where I can work via video and sit here and do these meetings like this all day, is because I can do this right here in my office on the island in the Puget Sound, or I could be on a boat, down in Belize. I can be anywhere, and all I need is high-speed internet, and I can work. And all of my clients, and some people are like, well, hey, what if your clients aren't into video conferencing? I'm like, well, then they're not my clients, right? I have very much built this, the things that we have going right now, we have flat out beat it into submission. It has been, the pieces that I have going right now, you mentioned a couple of things that I have had a lot of things just kind of fall in my lap. There's other pieces that I have literally beaten into submission and formed it into my vision of what I want, of how I want to live my life. And the ideas of what we're doing here virtually, because right now I'm not doing a lot of it, but when I travel around the country, I'm still able to meet with clients. I do travel, I speak. I've got several different, speaking events I have to do this fall where I'll be on the road. I'll be meeting with my clients from hotel rooms, so I can still do that. And so it's a kind of a unique thing that we've done, and the ability to position ourselves so that we are able, what does the future bring? I'll be doing this for a long time, but I'll be doing it on my terms.
That's awesome.
And that does go back to the jarhead perseverance. There is, one of the questions you asked me earlier was, how you've been successful, that kind of stuff. And it's frankly that, it's that marine perseverance of we're too stupid to know when we've been beat. So,
we just keep putting our head down and go.
You just keep going, and eventually it works out. Right. And so there's been a lot that we've done that has been very much the way we're running our companies now, and the things we're doing are very much doing it. We're doing it the way we want to do it.
So that's awesome. Cool. Yeah, no, that's really cool. That's really cool. Man, I got to tell you, I really appreciate you having on the show. Here's how I wrap up every show. And I do stump some people, so be forewarned. If you could leave my audience with a quote, a phrase, a motto, mantra, some sort of saying that they could take with them on their journey, especially when they're stacked up against it, man. Maybe they're hitting the dark time in their life. Maybe their business going south, family's going south, whatever. What would be that quote or phrase you say, take this with you and use it when you need it?
The one that pops into my head as you're saying that, and it goes back to kind of meaning where my encouragement of this saying would be for perseverance of, sometimes you just have to slog through it and figure it out, is I love this quote. And it's that good judgment comes from experience, but experience comes from bad judgment.
True.
Right?
Absolutely true.
And that goes to perseverance, is that you have to just get in there. And sometimes, think back to the Donnie, who was a 22 or 23-year-old Marine. I'm betting there was some bad judgment in there.
Well, I'm 41 now, and there's still some bad judgment in there. So
I'm just gonna guess there was some bad judgment in there.
No, man.
And then you get experience from that, and that's where that that good judgment comes from. And so that's perseverance is just going, hey, you know what? I mean, so you things are going to go good, things are going to go bad. When they go bad, you go home, you lick your wounds, and you get up and you do it again the next day.
That's it. Well, brother, I got to tell you, I appreciate you coming on the show, sharing your journey, man. It's always good to catch up with you. Got a lot of golden nuggets out of this, man, so I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. It's been a lot of fun. Good catching up with you, man.
Guys, really thank you for listening to this episode. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun putting these together. I wanted to make sure before we get out of here that you knew what we were doing with social content. What we found was because of the podcast, we have a unique way of helping you get your social content out on a very easy way. What we're doing is we're interviewing people. And from that interview, we will capture a lot of information that will then be turned into videos, memes, articles, all things you can use for your social content. I know, like for me, one of the biggest struggles I had was, what do I put out there? What do I say on a regular basis? Well, we'll help do all that for you. So if this is at all of interest to you, reach out to us and let us help you grow your social media channel. I can tell you I did this for my business, and my social media is completely taking off. My Instagram, since I started doing this, jumped over 10,000 followers, and it continues to grow. So if this is at all of interest to you, check the bottom of the show notes for the link that says, Get My Social Content Done right now.